from Jurassic Park.
Josh is muted.
Josh is muted. Uh-oh. Hey, folks.
We're waiting for Josh to go.
Okay. Right. Can you all hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to the Paranormal Council, where we are going to continue part 3 of sort of a attachment possession series. The first one we talked about sort of protections overall with yourself. Then we actually dove into why that's important, which was the attachments and possessions. And we're also going to dive a little more into your own property as well, because it's important to look at your personal space also in that sense. So, welcome everybody. Hopefully, you guys are in a good mood tonight and ready to dive into some good material. And speaking of good material, I just wanted to say, recently I have heard some podcasts out there just kind of like talking about other podcasts and how there's lack of real content. And I just want to say, folks, the real content is here with the Paranormal Council. But you folks, the audience, we love you. And I encourage you guys to watch all the podcasts out there and assess things for yourself. But we do have real content here, and I will always stand behind that no matter what. So, guys, welcome to the show. And we're going to dive into property possession stuff. Now, one thing before we get into that, I want to get back a little bit to the last episode where we talked about attachments and things like that. Now, Jen reminded me of this actually too. And then Sean and I actually talk, and actually Sean and I got to meet up in real life. We live apart, so it's always nice when you get to meet fellow co-hosts and stuff IRL. So
right.
That was nice. But Jen reminded me of this, is that there's a lot of teams out there that will tell you that if a client does not contact you, then they must not want help and they will not follow up with people. And I wanted to just say that I don't believe in that. I know Jen was expressing that as well. She doesn't really believe in that. And so I wanted to kind of get into a little bit of that as well, because we were talking about how attachments and possessions last episode can affect your thoughts and your actions. So if one of you all want to explain a little bit of that, I'm more than happy to step aside and let you all explain, one of y'all explain some of that.
Well, I mean, I can jump in. I mean, because, I brought it up, open my big mouth, insert foot, right? My experience with that in the past and what, Josh and I have received a call about a residential case, which is why we're having these conversations. But, I consulted with a number of paranormal teams in the past, specifically on residential cases, because that's where the majority of my background is. And it was surprising to me that the majority, and I mean, it is a rare exception that I have found in teams that, say a client reaches out and they're like, hey, I really need some help. And you're like, cool, when can we talk? And then they go silent, right? Or it's like pulling teeth to get a response from them. And you're like, what's going on? Why aren't they responding? And a lot of teams have just kind of made a policy that when that happens, they're done. Like, if they reach out again, maybe we'll talk to them, but we're not going to chase them down. Clearly, they weren't interested. They had other motives for reaching out in the first place. And that's where, I just really, in overall the years that I've done this, to me, that's a real red flag because, sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it is somebody that wants something else. But until you really get to do that intake process and you get to understand really what's going on, there are other things at play or can be at play. And in those cases, when I've dug into them, more often than not, there's somebody that actually needs help. And, when you're in the paranormal and you're doing residential cases and you're dealing with potential attachments or possessions or things like that, you need to understand what the heck you're talking about before you just make policies and do things, and decide if you're going to do these things, do your way. Cool. But be knowledgeable about what you're going to do, because in a lot of these cases, these people are the people who truly need the help. They're the ones that, Josh put it the best way, little Satan sitting on your shoulder going, no, you don't want to talk to them. And you'll find in a lot of those cases, things will happen. A family member will pass away. A car will break down. They'll suddenly lose their job. They'll have a health issue pop up. They'll have all these different reasons why they didn't contact you. And these are all things that, in a lot of cases can eventually be attributed to some type of an attachment. And so, hearing that, teams are just, they have this policy of like, no, if they stop contacting, we're not going to reach out. To me, that's almost heartbreaking because of the amount of courage it takes to step up and say, hey, something's wrong here. I need your help. And then, they get to that point where they're like, okay, somebody's talking to me, right? And I'm going to go just a step back further and then I'll just shut up and let y'all talk. But, people don't think about the fact that as soon as a client reaches out to a pastor, to a paranormal team, to anybody to come, a medium even, to come into the home or to talk with them, everything that's around that person, whether it's an entity in the home, whether it's an attachment, whether it's an entity on another family member or somebody who recently visited the house, they know what you've just done. And they're not going to be happy about it. They're going to do what they can to dissuade you, make you fearful, make you distracted. They're going to do whatever they can. So it doesn't start from when we show up at the door. They're going to hear the phone conversations that you have with them during your intake process. They're going to know every single thing that you've been told, and they're going to try to use that to your advantage when you show up, or their advantage when you show up, right? There is so much more to residential cases than just this, especially ones that involve attachments and demonics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with, I'll kind of just follow up with that. Several things. Obviously, when people call me, they're not wanting me to come investigate. They're usually wanting to either deal with something they have or something's going on in their home. And as I was talking to Josh in person the other day, I kind of shared that sometimes I actually have one card. Sometimes it's made up, and a lot of people don't know this. I have one card that's made up. When I feel the discernment coming on, I'll hand them that one particular card, and that card has two phone numbers on there. One is my phone number regular, and one is the same phone number backwards, because some people are, when they're influenced and under the influence of certain spiritual stuff, they will, the spirits will try to bring chaos, and believe it or not, I've actually had people call me and then they was like, how did it, and you can kind of hear something in the background. How did that happen? Why are you talking? You can almost hear this stuff going on in the background spiritually. I know that me and Josh had talked about this. I know we done a show, I think, 7 years ago or something like that, you said. And there's different times I will do different things. When someone calls me and they're stepping up, like you said, they're wanting to me to come and be involved in what they're doing and help them, a lot of times I will respond immediately. If they don't call me back, I'll call once or twice until I make that initial contact. And once I make that initial contact, I'll say, hey, I'm going to help you. Let's walk through this. And part of my process sometimes is, the next step is for me to go to their home or to meet them somewhere and to kind of go through what we talked about, that kind of an intake, kind of an issue, and just have a conversation with them. It's really hard, like you said, sometimes to get that second contact. It's really hard for them to kind of come back. Sometimes it's because the spirit themselves is blocking, like you said, or sometimes it's like, oh no, they're talking themselves out of it because they think they're crazy. And they don't want to meet with you. But I will generally wait 2 or 3 days to a week and call back. And if I can make one more contact with them, I'll make that one more contact. It's kind of crazy though. Sometimes there has been times to where I've said, okay, and I've just left it. And usually even my first call will say, look, if you don't contact me back, I will usually call you back once or twice more. After that, it's your responsibility. And I do believe in responsibility of individual. So there's a little bit of a play there. So I think it's kind of tough. But anyway, I'll kind of shut up and let you guys get at it there.
Well, go ahead, Stacy. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my technique's, a little bit of a hybrid on the other two. Since my background in dealing with this stuff is religiously based, and one of the major tenets of the religion is no proselytization, I can't actually reach out to anyone for anything on this particular thing. If there's an initial contact and they get a hold of me and they're got a lot of questions, a lot of doubts, a lot of, uncertainties, I actually direct them to one of my courses for like almost no money and say, take the course, learn what's going on. So they become familiar personally what it is that's involved and all the things that are taking place. And after all is said and done, they still feel that they're uncomfortable about it. They can reach out to me. If they don't, that's the end of it. I can't actually reach out to them and say, you want me to come cleanse your house? You want me to, take care of the situation for you? Largely because it's a DIY in the courses on being able to do it themselves. And it gives them the opportunity to actually, with that knowledge, know whether or not they want to, have me come back in. And that being, the case, most of the time, I never get a call back. The students are either able to handle it themselves because they caught it early enough, or they were such a lost cause that they just went on and dealt with the consequences. Either way, the rare occasion where I come in and actually do anything.
Yeah, and that's why we have this panel, right? We have 4 different views, most of the time, fairly different and different approaches, right? My approach, I do have a prostate, I do have balls, so I will call my people. I'm just missing. You use fancy words, Stacy. So my prostate's good. I'm going to call them.
Proselytize. I said proselytize, not prostate.
Yeah, something about balls. So I was like, hey,
salesman Josh.
I'm gonna call them. Like, look, I'm gonna call them, and and I understand your perspective, Jason. I'm not knocking it. It's what it is for what you do. For me, my approach is going to be, I'm going to try to make sure that I can get through that person because I know what they could be going through. And, do I agree with the lost cause thing? I mean, that's tough. It's tough to say because I don't like to give up on souls, but I do know there is some people that, I don't know how much, at least on a non-professional level, so to speak. I do consider
Well,
myself a professional, but when it comes to professional help, sometimes
the lost cause
there
thing,
is.
it's more like what I treat it like it's an alcoholic. You know, an alcoholic will not accept, any kind of help until they hit rock bottom. And when they hit rock bottom, that's when they actually need someone there. If they know that I'm there and they hit rock bottom, that's one thing. But, I can't, you can't stop an alcoholic from being an alcoholic until they decide they no longer want to be an alcoholic. It's the same kind of thing. They have to want
Yeah,
to purge the demon.
I don't know if I agree with the same thing, to be honest with you. I'm just respectfully disagreeing because I feel like in this case we're talking about possessions, and that's different than alcohol or drugs. I think there's similarities. I really do, and I think I can see you. I can meet with you on a lot of that. But my fear with possessions and attachments like that is that if it gets too bad, yeah, they're going to hit rock bottom when they jump out of a building, and I don't want to see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do get it, and I do come across some people that I have to let go, unfortunately, because again, there's only so much help you can do before it turns into sort of a professional level medical situation. Sometimes it's kind of a weird, crazy gray area sometimes on that, but I get it.
Let's take Stacy's analogy here for a minute and run with it, right? So when we're talking about addiction, right, and some of the similarities that it has to like attachments or possessions and getting rid of them, right? When we talk about like home cleansing, a person cleansing, your own energy cleansing, those things, right? There is this concept of human authority versus spiritual authority. And what we're also talking about free will, right? And how does that play into home cleansings, personal cleansings, things like that? It's the same type of thing, right? And there is a rock bottom, definitely. And there is intervention that can take place at different levels. And not everybody who battles addiction hits rock bottom before they succeed, right? A lot of it is determined by free will, human authority, spiritual authority, their faith basis, all those different things, right? So there's definitely some similarities. There's definitely a large data bank to draw from on that as far as proof, right? But it's the same thing too with like the home cleansings and things like that. When do you do them? Why do you do them? How do you do them? Do you wait till you hit rock bottom to try to take care of it? And that's what we want to talk about.
Well, and that's probably a good transition point, because this is something that, in fact, it was important to Stacy too. Like, it was important that we talked about home cleansing. That's why we really wanted to do this third episode. Stacy was like, hey, we really need to talk about the property and the home. So I want to make sure we have opportunity to get into that. So it's a good transition, Jen, to start talking about why or when it's important to maybe do something about your property or home. And actually, Stacy, if you want to kick us off with that, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, as far as being able to, at what point to intervene, I have no problem with the whole idea of catching it early, whether it be a person or a place. You want to get it as soon as possible, because the less they're dug in like a tick, the easier it is to get rid of. So I'm all for that. It's just, where does my responsibility begin? If they don't want me in their house, I can't really cleanse the house. If they're afraid of, the repercussions of irritating a spirit because they're so afraid, that's a different animal to deal with. And you have to be able to, segue the comfort level in order to actually get into the scenario and actually do the cleansing, do the exorcism. And which is really what we're talking about. Even cleansings themselves are technically exorcisms. It's just an exorcism is typically viewed through Hollywood that it's a person and not on a place. Well, you're doing it on a place. It's an exorcism. You're expelling, the spirit within. Now, that being said, the whole idea around cleansing the home is just like you would regular hygiene. You sweep your floors, you clean your house. It's not just spring cleaning or fall cleaning or whatever that you do your cleansing. It's essentially when you do something that would bring home an attachment. Most people don't realize just going to Walmart does that. But, when you're going to, a haunting or paranormal investigation, things of that kind, investigators can get cocky and say that, well, I know when I have an attachment and I know I didn't bring anything home. Yeah, really? How do you know that? Because these things are sneaky. They don't, let themselves be known most of the time. And they wait until you're in a vulnerable place. You get drunk in your own house. You go to sleep. During REM sleep specifically, you are particularly vulnerable. Or for the ladies, when Aunt Flo seems to come through once a month, you are particularly vulnerable, emotionally unstable, and allows that sort of attachment to actually start working you, and just makes everything worse. But you don't notice it because you think it's all you. You don't think it's an attachment or an outside influence. You think it's coming from within, when it's really not. It's something that is convincing you that it is you, and you were believing it, because why else would I not think these things? Well, after a good cleansing of the home, yeah, you really do feel the house changes. The energy in the house changes. You feel it. You're like, wow, that really is a whole lot lighter in here. There's a lot. It feels brighter in here now. Why? I didn't even notice it, because it's like, it really is like getting schmutz on your glasses. You don't notice how bad it is until you really can't see. You clean them once and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I couldn't see all that before. It's really like that. And in order to do a cleansing in the African diaspora, you want to use things that are foul smelling or medicine-y smell. One of the favorites to do a good cleansing is to boil camphor. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's the active ingredient in Vicks Vapor Rub or Halls, that medicine-y, nursing home smell. It is really kind of rancid in that way. But they come in these little bitty tablets about the size of a Hall's cough drop. And you can buy that at Walmart for like $4. Get a brick of them that are like 5 tabs in one thing, and you throw those in a pot of boiling water, and your whole house will smell like a nursing home. If you get too close, your eyes will burn, your nasal will actually clean out. You'll start to breathe a little bit deeper because, it's Vicks Vapor Rub. But the spirits themselves hate it. They hate it more than anything, and they just leave. In that, once that happens and you essentially, vacated the house, that's when you want to ward it closed. It's where they can't come back in. And there's a lot of different methods for that too. But warding the house after is locking the door so they can't get back in. They show a lot of it in Hollywood, and it's kind of over dramatized, like in the TV show Supernatural. Get the salt. Well, yeah, you can do that, but it's only as effective as the prayer that you put over the salt, because salt is neutral. Salt by itself doesn't do anything. It is crystalline, in the same crystalline structure as quartz crystal. So you can actually imbue prayer onto the crystal, the salt, and ward off your property that way, over the thresholds, over the windows, and things of that kind. And there's other methods too, bay leaves, and even getting a brick from Louisiana called St. Joe's brick, which has officially been blessed by the Catholic Church. It acts like holy water, It's officially, that's how they use it around cemeteries. You crush up the brick and use the brick dust the same way you would use the salt. And it's a barrier that the dead can't cross. That's why they put it around the cemeteries and the churches. So it's a specific thing for that reason.
And I want to take a quick moment, guys, while we're around that almost halfway point. Shout out to everybody in the chat, Kitty Cat, Mom, everybody out there. You guys, it's good to see you guys in the chat. I know we're missing Andrea. Shmooky popped in there. But guys, great to see you. Thanks to everybody watching. And remember, this is the show you can interact with. So if you have questions and comments, by all means, get them in the chat. We're always happy to answer them while we're on the air. Also, I wanted to make a quick announcement. Guys, we are starting the Paranormal Council Discord. It is up and running right now, but it is a work in progress, so bear with it. But folks, we wanted a place for you guys, a place that you guys can go and you can post pictures, audio, you can have discussions. We've got rooms, and hopefully our plan is, which we got to talk to Stacey and Sean about as well, but maybe in the future, we'd like to try to maybe do some post show over there on Discord for a little bit and let you guys pop in there and actually interact with us. You guys will be able to get in there like one big group chat and interact. So it's going to be a nice place for people to go. If you love paranormal, you love these discussions, and you want to take it even deeper, it's a nice place to go. And it's 24/7. So if all of a sudden you guys will also have a place that you can talk to each other. So if for some reason, and Kitty Cat, you wanted to discuss something with Andrea or somebody on there, and you guys wanted to go to the Discord, there's a private chat channel. You guys can video chat or audio chat and discuss things. Or just text. So,
so does that mean we can't cuss and smoke post show anymore?
Well, I mean, if you want, what the post show would be if we moved it to Discord would be like the rated R. If we wanted to, it would be like the after party, right? This is where we're gonna go after the show and hang out with the folks in chat and just let our hair down and talk whatever we want to talk for a little bit of time, and then, but it's also a landing place for 24/7. People can go. They can post memes. They can post pictures. If they have evidence they want us to look at, there's going to be all kinds of stuff that you can do there once we have that going. So we'll get all that information out there here soon. For be on the lookout. So be on the lookout. Obviously, looks like Smokey and Kitty Cat's familiar with it from video games. So yeah, so you guys will know Discord, and it'll be awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. Like I said, that way I get a chance for all of us and you guys to hang out together and get on there and actually talk to us, and we might even have places we can do one-on-one stuff too with you guys. If you need some one-on-one stuff, we'll have some private stuff too. You can pull you into like private chats and stuff like that if we need to. So just thought I'd announce that. I think, was there anything else I wanted to announce? I don't know, Jen. We got all kinds of stuff that'll eventually come up, I'm sure. But the Facebook page now there is the Paranormal Council Facebook page. So that is a thing now. So you might even be watching it from Facebook tonight on here. So anyways, all right. So back to cleansing. I just wanted to get that out of the way since we had everybody in chat. Again, you guys are what, drive us, is to help you guys. You guys have been an amazing audience. So thank you. Smash that like button and continue to share out there. We've been slowly growing. So, all right. So who wants to go and add more about property protection, cleansing?
Well, I'll kind of chime in and give the Christian perspective here and what I do. And you're not going to be able to see it too much, but I've got this front page of this whole notebook is the process that we go through. We're very thorough when I get on the property, even before we actually got a post protocol before we go to the property, a lot of prayer time, a lot of stuff, just like what we do with our deliverance. It's really, like Stacy said, it's kind of like the same thing as the deliverance. We spend a lot of time talking with the homeowner and the people before we get to this point. But once we get to that point, we get on property. We have this protocol. And basically what we do is we start from the moment we get into that property boundary line, whether it's from the driveway. Sometimes I'll get out of the car and let my team go on in, and I start praying from the time from the boundaries and just including everything. I'm looking at everything and get into the home. We just sit down and we start at one point and just talking about cleansing a home. And for me, cleansing a home is getting rid of the spirits altogether. And we don't really spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out who they are, what they are, why they're there. I know that upsets a lot of people, but we're taking the space back for the people that's living in that place. And so we ask God to shut everything down and bring up what we need to bring up and deal with. And if there's an entity there, if there's a demon there or something else there that needs to be gone, that he brings that up and we'll deal with that. And so we just start from probably the innermost most part of the room is kind of like painting. We're going to start from the inside and work our way out. Every room has a particular prayer. Like I said, we have a protocol we go through. Kind of coming back to one of the things that we're talking about at the very beginning of the show is because I'm Christian and because we're going to be dealing with things, I will proselytize. I will take care. We're going to talk about, because some of the things that we're going to deal with and how we deal with it is from the Christian perspective. And a lot of times I don't get the call back because of that. And that's one reason I don't get a lot of calls sometimes back, is because I share with them, we're going to come from this from a Christian perspective. And if that is not what you want, please let me know now. But once we get involved with that, we go room to room. And basically what we're doing is dealing with the sin that was committed in that room, that there be no open doorways. Just like we talk with a person being possessed or attached, there's a sin that opened that door, and we have the person, the person who owns the home, renounce the sins that were done in that area, in that room, especially a bedroom. Basements can be a lot of stuff. And as we're walking through, we're looking for occult items, witchcraft items, things that are going to be bringing the spirits in. We're going to get them out. We're going to say, listen, they're going to be gone. And we usually, if those items are there, that means they're practicing that stuff. So we're going to be having to have a conversation about the stuff that they're practicing, and the dangers of that and why that is dangerous. And, again, we've talked about this before. If you're doing things just because you see it on TV, you're practicing stuff that you don't understand. But for long story short, we deal with the sins. We ask God to set boundaries, and we command the spirits to leave that room and leave that house and leave that property, and they can never come back. And we set those boundaries, and we ask God to set the boundaries, kind of like when Satan was talking to God in the book of Job. He was like, I can't do nothing to Job because you got a boundary set. You set some boundaries around him. I can't do nothing to him. And that was even the most powerful guy, right? He can't do nothing because God has set a boundary. We teach all this during that time period too. I'm just giving you a very short example of what we do, but we get rid of the sin, we set the boundaries, and we move on to the next room. And then we do a sealing or setting the final boundaries for that place. And then we kind of deal with the ones who want to do battle. And we do battle with those things through prayer and deal with it that way. And usually there's times I have to go back. Stacy was talking about the house, feeling lighter. Um, when I went into the last house I did, actually, um, when I went in and we came out, the daughter was kind of like not into it, any all that. And she left and went to the store and came back, and she's like, "Mom, I don't know what y'all did to this house, but it's completely different. It is. I don't mind being here now." She's like, "I don't know what you've done," and we talked to her about what we done, but it is completely different. And so I'll kind of throw it back now to Jen or to somebody else there.
Yeah, I
Jen,
mean,
you want to add on the top yourself?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have different methodologies here, right? For sure. And I think, mine's a little bit different. Mine's more of a hybrid, right? We talked about it a little bit in like the residential episode that we did, about how important it is when you're going into a home to understand like the faith belief system of the client. And Sean talked about that. He comes in with a Christian perspective, and if they don't want that, then that's not a place that they should be, appreciate you, thank you, but this isn't going to work, right? And so for me, being able to utilize different options, I can find one that best suits the client and their needs, right? And I do believe it's multiple parts to cleansings, right? You have to address what's going on in the home. You have to remove it from the home. You have to, as Stacey was talking about, ward it, and Sean was talking about protecting it, right? But this is one of the things I run into a lot with clients is they have this understanding that once Sean comes in and blesses the home and puts up these barriers, or Stacey comes in and he wards the home, right? That they're never going to have problems again, ever. And they're not realizing that wards can be broken, and that life still happens, and that when we make different choices and we invite things into our lives intentionally or unintentionally, that will break through that, right? When we set these boundaries with the best of intentions, things happen, right? It's like we talk about like spirit communication, or how portals are created. Whenever we open a line of communication, then there is that transfer, right? And even something like, say, a phone call that your grandmother is now in hospice care, and the emotional toll that takes on you in your home, right? That's a form of communication, but now it's adding a trauma inside your home. It has now crossed those barriers and it is in your home. You allowed it to happen. You picked up the phone, you answered the phone, you had that conversation, right? We unintentionally invite some of this stuff into our homes, which over time, these little things can add up if we're not maintaining it. They can start to chip away at it. You can start to deal with some depression and make some bad choices and say some wrong things. And that's where sin creeps in. And, reaching out of desperation to do different things with your craft practice, things like that, right? That's how wards and protections and blessings can kind of get steamrolled over. It's not that they're not working anymore. It's that life has continued from that point of placement, right? And that's one of the biggest things that clients say to me. They're like, "Oh, well, you're going to protect it and I'm good. I don't ever have to do anything again." No, this isn't a magic wand. Your life isn't going to be perfect from here on out. But I will teach you, before we leave, how to maintain this. It will be your responsibility from here on out to realize that whenever there is a trauma in your life, whenever there is a crossroads in your life, whenever you bring something home, or you've invited somebody over and they've just left this energy stank on your house, that it's time to get rid of it, right? But so how to do this and reinforce those wards, those blessings, those boundaries that you already have there by maintaining them, right? Brick walls eventually fall down, even though they're really strong. If you don't take care of them, if you don't maintain them, if you don't tuck point them, they're going to fall down. Same thing with anything else. So, my methodology is like, cleanse it and educate, involve the homeowner, set the protections, but make sure that they understand how to take care of it, right? from whatever perspective they have, because faith without understanding means nothing, right? Same thing with like the craft. If you don't know what you're doing, it means nothing. If you have no intention behind it, it doesn't work. Or if you have the wrong intention behind it, it works wrong. It doesn't work the way you intended to, right? And so, like, you have to know enough, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things
Well,
that
well, I was gonna say real quick, the way I kind of like also try to explain to people too is like, look, you wouldn't just go now. Maybe some of you nasty people out there, but you wouldn't just go clean your home one time, right? You wouldn't just go mop your floors and wipe down everything and say, "Well, I'm good from now on." No, I mean you got to regularly clean your home, right? You got to maintain that. You know, it's going to get dirty over time. Okay, you're gonna go to like Stacy said earlier, even just go to Walmart, right? You're gonna go to Walmart, or you're gonna go to like out in public. Okay, you're gonna bring dirt home with you, spiritual baggage. Okay, so your home is gonna get dirty, and that's why, like, I honestly, like Stacy brought up great things, Sean brought up great things, Jen tied it together, and really brought up some good points. That yes, these things will work as long as you, the client, let them work and reinforce them and continue to do the work. Stacy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and on that front too, on cleansing the house, on keeping it clean, it doesn't. You don't have to have, a whole lot of, you know, expertise in juju in order to do it. There's off the shelf products that everybody uses every day, or a lot of people use every day, that actually have that stuff built in. In the
Like pine sol, right?
exactly pine salt, pine and evergreen are natural cleansing agents. The Germanic people, in Christmas every year you put a pine tree in your house for, Christmas. What do you think that's for? It's to cleanse the area. You put a evergreen wreath on the door, so it acts like a lint brush. The people, as they're walking in, the energy, the negative energy of the people who are walking in and out of your front door get caught up in like a spider web into that evergreen, into that wreath, and cleanses people as they're walking through the threshold. It's part of the spirit of it. The mistletoe, all the stuff that we take for granted as being festive for Christmas actually has spiritual cleansing properties for a reason why it's there.
You don't want dirty people to meet Santa.
Yeah, well, I mean, Santa by himself, is a thing, but these things we normally do, and a lot of it's just tradition. We don't actually attribute it to spiritual cleansings. But if you take a branch off a pine tree in your front yard and use it as a broom to sweep out the cobwebs in the corners of your house, use pine sol on the floor, it gets rid of the spirit attachments that just happen to wander into your house from Walmart. It gets rid of them pretty quick, and that's just a thing. And the Latin culture, it has that embedded in. The broom is the most powerful tool for witchcraft that they have, because it actually cleanses the stuff out. And also, that being said, with witchcraft, we didn't talk about this at all. 90% of the spirit activity that people get in their homes, the attachments, things like that, 90% of that is pretty much your own damn fault, whether you realize you did it or not. The other 10% is not. There's about 10% of people out there who get stuff thrown at them from witches, from people who are conjuring stuff. And it doesn't have to be, a full-on ritual in order to do it. They have products that you can buy off the shelf and on eBay called goofer dust. Goofer dust is a curse in a bottle, and it's basically cayenne pepper with a lot of other little ingredients in it. But you can put that in somebody's shoes and have them drag it home with them, and brings them bad luck wherever they go. And no matter how much you've warded your front door or warded your house, if you got goofer dust on your shoes, it's going to bust through all that. And you're going to have all of this stuff in your house anyway. So you have to be able to know how to cleanse that stuff and get it out of your house, get it off your shoes, or else it's just going to keep coming back. There's no ward that's going to stop it.
Well, I think it's just kind of a good point. Talk about paranormal teams. I actually was helping a paranormal team here probably about a year ago. One of the things I recommended to them, because they were having a ton of problems, everything y'all talk about, Jen talks about, man, it's just spot on for a lot of these teams. But talking about cleansing your home, even there's times that we will gain objects. People, I just had last week somebody give me an object, want me to get rid of it. I'm not taking that home to my house, but some people will. You know what I'm saying? And they think it's cool. But again, if someone's giving you an object that they're trying to get rid of, you ought to kind of think about that for a little bit. But
most of that is antiquing. People bring home stuff from antiquing, and they got some kind of weird energy or an attachment to the thing that was trying to be sold for a discount price for no reason whatsoever, because they want to get rid of it, and it's got some kind of weird something.
I will tell you, I've had more things with mirrors, antique mirrors, people buying stuff with mirrors. Some people kind of think it's dumb or not real, but I will tell you, there's a lot of things happening with mirrors that, especially old ones, mercury type stuff, even though it's mercury poison, but still there's a lot of stuff that happens, like with scrying and stuff that people do, and all that's coming into your house when you get that thing. So be very careful. And that's, like I said, when we go through ours, I'm asking questions all the time. Where does this come from? Does this matter to you? What have you done with this? All those questions are coming about cleansing that house. So.
In Latin cultures in South America specifically, the mirror thing is real. If you're in a situation where there's hospice, where somebody's dying in the home, or they're having the funeral in the home, they'll drape the mirrors. They'll cover the mirrors because they don't want that person or the spirit to be caught in the mirror, because that's a portal.
Right.
And it's more like the Ghostbusters box that lights up and captures, spirits, because they wander into it because they can't see their own reflection. Next time they're on the other side of that mirror, and they can't get back out. So it's like they cover the mirrors to protect the loved one from getting caught in that mirror, that portal.
Right. Well, and let's face it, Sean, obviously you work at church, right? That's church is really like a form of human cleansing, right? Every Sunday, people go to church to cleanse, really. I mean, they've sinned all week, and they're bringing you all their spiritual baggage, and they want to be cleansed by the end of that sermon, right? So you're constantly getting that influx,
Now we have to. I think I've talked to you personally about this before, but we have protocols at our church that we constantly clean the church. We spiritually, because of just that very same thing, and plus we got a graveyard right beside, and so we do a lot of, or at least I do, and I've trained some of my people to do it. And there was one situation where somebody came into church, and it was like I knew something was happening spiritually. And about half, during our invitation time, this person came forward wanting prayer. And as I was beginning to pray, I had to ask the deacons to take the service, and I went and took this person. Me and another person went out, and we got rid of some spirits that way. But again, like you said, man, the church, and the same thing kind of happens in your home. Like Stacy said a while ago, there's some people, I've literally, not trying to be, if somebody's watching this, you ever come to my house and I've asked you not to come in, I'm not always saying you're having a demon here, but sometimes I've stopped people from coming in my home because I don't know, number one, who they are, Number two, I can sense something there. So I'm very
They're
careful who I let
vampires.
in my, yeah, I mean, I'm very careful who I let in my home now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I
Oh
never
yeah.
asked you before. Do you know if in that graveyard behind your church, if there's any criminals in that graveyard, like people who were executed or murderers or things like that?
Yeah, there's several big stories that I've uncovered over the years. Not like notorious, but people. Yeah, short answer is yeah. So
So
Yeah, that
since
that's.
we're go ahead, finish your
I was just
thoughts
going to
there.
say that's one of the major ingredients to the goofer dust is the graveyard dirt of a criminal who's been executed. So if you know that, I mean, just people stomping around in that graveyard and then walking into your church, it kind of has the same effect of that same juju. So you want to cleanse just on that alone.
remind me at the
Yeah.
end, Josh. He hit something. Remind me. I want to tell a quick funny story, but go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, since I wanted to get back a little bit talking about when we were talking about setting up boards and barriers and bringing stuff in. I just wanted to get your guys' take on how about welcome mats? When people put welcome mats out, is that inviting, things into their home that are non-physical?
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't thought of it in quite that fashion, but we intentionally put scriptures upon our walls and upon our house and upon our door. So I'm sure that knock that you hear at night and you go and look and you open the door, uh, that's a telltale sign that something's going on, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And and Zach, yeah, you're
I'm sorry,
right.
I got
They should
distracted.
be
I was reading
concerned.
what Zach was saying.
Right.
I think we all
I know
were.
that's what I was. Yeah, we were all reading that.
I
But
can't
yeah,
believe
like,
that
and
was
like one of my very first preliminary investigations for the show Ghost Hunters back in the day was an antique mall. And then I've done other antique malls, and they are always unique. There's things that come and go, um, you know, and so yeah, like it's when people visit these places, they're gonna be around objects that have attachments, and people can sit there and say, whether they believe in ghosts or not. It's not about whether you believe, because in all honesty, most people understand that spirits are real. And even if you believe in God, most people understand that ghosts are real to a certain degree. But you're gonna get these things. These are things to help people, whether you want to believe in them or not. It doesn't change that fact, so to speak. It's like, well, I don't maybe I don't believe in Bigfoot, but hey, it could exist. It's plausible, but maybe that's not a good example. But Sean.
Yeah, I love Bigfoot. So you got to believe in him, man.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And there's a lot of people that go through life and they're like, well, I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in that, stuff like that. But it doesn't change the fact that they still can be susceptible
Oh,
to these
absolutely.
things and stuff like that, and whether they want to admit it or not. And some people will go around and they'll have attachments that they'll carry for many, 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 many decades.
How
I
many ghost hunters do we know? How many paranormal investigators do we know? Zach knows one too. He met one who spent years as a complete skeptic, and their whole point is to prove that ghosts do not exist. Their whole goal is to be able to debunk everything and show that this does not exist, right? They're trying to prove it wrong, spend decades of their life trying to prove this, and then they have one experience that changes everything, right? So it doesn't matter how much you believe something doesn't exist, it doesn't make it actually not exist just because your perception doesn't allow you to see it or accept it. And we see it happen all the time.
Oh yeah. And sometimes they think, especially people that like in my experience, there's a lot of people that are like say Christians that will sit there and say, I don't believe in ghosts and spirits and stuff, and they think that by saying it that somehow will make them
Yeah.
more godly or more in line with the church, so to speak. But that doesn't really make sense, and probably Sean
Yeah. I
can
mean,
elaborate on that even more than me.
yeah. I
But
mean, I'll have them all the time. I can believe in God. I believe in Jesus and the Holy Spirit. I can believe in a little bit, but angels, demons, spirits, and dude, we have like floating axe heads and angels and demons, and it's part of the fabric of the account. So, it's like I've had pastors. I actually really had one pastor one time. He really berated me in an association meeting, and because he didn't believe in all the paranormal, didn't believe in any of this, thought I was doing something wrong, and he really tried to get me kicked out of the association. And I was about to stand up and say something, and the Lord says, "No, don't." And I was like, "Why? I need to put this guy," And anyway, my pride was squelched. Well, about I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months later, this guy calls me. The same guy calls me and it's like, we're having a conversation. And I'm like the whole time going, "Why are you talking to me? You don't like me." Well, finally at the end of it, he's like, "Hey, I got a question. My daughter is into witchcraft and there's stuff going on. I don't know how to handle it. What do I do?" And so, kind of like what you said, I think somebody said it a while ago. It's all make believe to some people until they actually have an encounter. So,
what's really crazy to think though, when you go back, and I've talked about this before on the show, Smokey was talking about her husband being a skeptic and doesn't believe in any of this and stuff. It's crazy when you think about it because there was a time in human history, thousands of years ago, some of the first recorded history, it was a common thing for people to see the dead. It was actually more common for people to see the dead and to interact and even sometimes combat demons and stuff than to not believe. So, and now we're on such an inverse of that over the years as we've, faded away from all this stuff. And it's kind of scary, but yeah, we got a lot less people and they're more of like, I don't believe in this and that. But there was a time when many of the cultures, and a lot of these cultures that are never really like proven to be linked together, that were spread out across the globe, talk about the dead and seeing the dead and all these things. There was a huge, it was like a normal part of life for thousands of years. Even the Romans had ghost stories and that they talked about, and they were very much believers as well and stuff like that. So it's just kind of funny when you kind of hear some of this to me.
Well, if I can, I'd like to go back just a minute. There was something I wanted to mention too. When it comes, because we're talking about house cleansings, it's really important too to know what you're dealing with, right? And we've talked about it with other things in the past, residential investigations and things like that. But certain types of cleansings don't work for every situation. Certain things will make it more mad and make it worse than removing it. Some things you do will make it hold on to the property harder instead of leaving. And that's why, like, I think, for people who are watching, they're like, well, they're not telling us what to do. Well, there's so many different ways, so many different things, so many different situations, approaches, things like that. Like, we couldn't possibly talk about it all in 1 hour, right?
Right.
There's so many different unique situations. And it really comes down to the homeowner, the client themselves, who they are and how they want to handle it. Right?
Yeah. And I think you're right, Jen. You bring up a good point. There's actually 2 points I want to bring up on that. One, I just want to reinforce what you just said. I would say that, so for those of you that watch, that have watched this episode, and maybe you want to apply these things, or maybe you watch this on the review, whatever. But I think you should try the pine saw. You should try the things that Stacy talked about, or if you need spiritual help from the church, somebody like Sean, help from somebody like Jen if you don't want to go to the church or whatever, or myself. We're all here to help. But I think what Jen is really alluding to as well is like maybe let's just say you mop your whole house in Pine Sol, but you're still having paranormal activity that night or something. It's like, what the hell? It's like, well, Stacy told me, whatever, right? Well, Stacy's right, but Jen's also right too, in the sense that it might be something else, okay? And it may not be good. So if you encounter those situations, maybe that's when you reach out, okay? You might say, okay, well, I tried those things. It's not working, so now I need to reach out. And that might be where, again, then that's why I just wanted to throw that out there to you. So the other thing as well is at the very beginning when we talked about people reaching out for help and things like that, no matter where you stand on it, one thing I wanted to say is this, is that sometimes, and like Stacy's right, like I think we all make good points on it. And one thing for sure is that no matter what step of the way it is, you might get a client to say, yes, I need help. You may go to their house and you may get there and they may even let you in, who knows, or you could get there and they may say, hey, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't want you stepping foot in this property. Even if it's the spirit talking, so to speak, you can't force your way into their house, especially with a lot of castle doctrines. So they'll probably shoot you. So there is a point at which you do have to step away. Now, I will say this, sometimes, okay, this is an advanced technique. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a little advanced technique. So sometimes in some cases, in the beginning of the case, you will actually not only talk to the client, you will talk to their family. Okay. Sometimes when the client pulls a 180, you can go to the clients, to the family sometimes and be like, hey, this spirit may be influencing them. I don't know, but maybe you can talk them into letting us in there and getting help. And so maybe we'll come back. So sometimes it just takes a little help from family members, things like that, as a workaround. That doesn't always work. That's not always the case. Some people are loners and things like that, or you don't always get to meet the family. And I'm just giving you guys another little option out there. Sean, did you want to say, you said you had a funny little something there.
So, as a pastor, sometimes, you're called to do, you're often called to do funerals and stuff. And I've learned one thing, and what Stacy said a while ago was something that kind of reminded me of it. And I actually had to rethink about some things that I've done in the past because what he said. But when you walk in a cemetery, please make sure you know where you're walking and look where you're walking, because the trend a lot of times right now is to save money. What they'll do is have the person cremated and spread their ashes on top of the ground. And or even at the beach. I've actually ran up on this twice at a beach, where people have thrown the ashes out onto the water, but actually they didn't go too far. It's on the beach as well. When you're walking through that gray mesh, that gray stuff, that is an actual body that you're walking through. And especially in a graveyard, I've had that happen to me twice. We were doing some work on the other side of the property, and we have to go through the graveyard to do it. And I was like, what's all this gray stuff? And then it hit me. Somebody had scattered ashes on the grave right there. And it was like, oh no, whoever you were, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mess with you. And so, you have to be very careful with that.
Yeah. And it actually does have a lot of energy behind it. I've got stories with the ashes scenario that I mean, if I was to tell Sean, he'd be like, yep, that's the way it works. But yeah, you want to pay attention to that. And one of the don'ts that we never got to of when you're cleansing your house, the things you don't want to do, don't do sage. Don't do the white sage, because that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. Every so many episodes we keep coming back to this because so many people do it wrong. Sage is used in sweat lodges and in spiritual walks for Native Americans as a way of attracting the spirits. They want the spirits in these sweat lodges while they're doing their spiritual walk, and that's what it's for, specifically to bring the spirits in. If you think you're going to cleanse your house because it smells pretty and it smells so much better now that it's cleansed, then that's not how spiritual stuff works. Sweet stuff attracts. Rancid sends them away. Myrrh, frankincense. Myrrh sends them away. They burn that. Ancient Egyptians burned that at night to send the spirits away. In the morning, they burn frankincense to bring the spirits in. Rise and set, Ra and set. That frankincense was Ra, set was myrrh, and those two things, because myrrh smells like ass, is what sends spirits away. It's nothing more magical than that. It is between sweet and bitter. And white sage is sweet. You don't want to use that to cleanse your house.
Yeah. And as we start to wrap it up, I just want to say again, thank you to all you folks watching tonight and everybody that watches on the replay. Thank you guys so much, and for all your participation in chat, guys. For those of you regulars that show up, love you. You really do drive us and make us want to keep doing this over and over. So, and yes, I think maybe doing another episode on mental health versus the paranormal, I think that could be good to discuss, especially maybe even on the back of these 3 episodes. That could be something to get into as well, because we have talked about attachments and possessions and what that can do to altered states of mind. So we may look at that next week, actually. And next week I should be back into my studio. So that'll feel good instead of coming from this little laptop and probably sounding like crap. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for showing up. It's been a great stream. Thank you for all the participation. Like, subscribe, and don't forget, we got the new Discord, the Paranormal Council Discord. We'll be getting out hopefully invites and links, or maybe you can look it up and come and join. And this is going to be a place for everybody to hang out and all that good stuff. But that's all coming. It's out there now, but we'll get it worked out even more. So, all right, guys, we will see you next week.
Peace.